This is Tea Earl Grey Hot, an unofficial Star Trek fan podcast from the Other Side Podcast Network. The Augments. Hello and welcome to Tea Earl Grey Hot, episode 6, a Star Trek fan podcast from the Other Side Podcast Network. My name is Yannick, I'm the French guy from Switzerland, and joining me this week, as usual, my friend and co-host Dave. How are you, Dave?
I am very well indeed, Yannick. Really excited to get to the end of this story arc. Can't wait.
Yeah. And joining us tonight, as it is now our routine, every 2 weeks we have a guest. This week he's a writer for Forbes. He's also a Linux enthusiast and host of the Linux for Everyone podcast. And he's Jason Evangelho. Hello, Jason. How are you?
Greetings. I'm doing really, really well. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
It's great to have you.
Yeah. We're still a young podcast. And as we used to say, we don't really know what we're doing. Well, kind of getting the grip on it right now. But it's really nice of you to join us for this review tonight. And after the review, we're going to have a quick chat with you about your relation to Star Trek.
Awesome. And I wouldn't have missed this. I mean, any chance to geek out over Star Trek is, you don't need an excuse for that. So,
all right, gentlemen, if you're ready, we're going to review The Augments, Star Trek Enterprise Season 4, Episode 6. So, in the teaser, Captain Jonathan Archer has just reached the primary junction in the central core of Cold Station 12. The captain has less than 40 seconds to save everyone on board the station, as any good captain would do. He manages to isolate the control room, but unfortunately, the clock reaches 0 and the pathogens are released inside the ventilation grid. Dr. Jeremy Lucas informs Archer that he has less than a minute before he becomes contaminated. Ta-da! And then roll credits.
Indeed.
Yeah, there's a gap between what we've seen last week and here, because last week it was, wondering if you had to go up, down, and then this teaser is already on the primary junction. And once again, it just have to change one teeny bit of technology just for essentially saving the world. So it's, I don't know, I was expecting something bigger.
Yeah, the fact that he seemed to know exactly what he needed to do. I think it was Trip that told him he just needed to divert the secondary relay. But that seems to be... He was able to convert that into a... Okay, I'll need to go up to this box, pull it out, put it in there and press a button.
Well, maybe every secondary relays are the same, and they learn that at the academy.
That's right. I mean, it's only an entire universe. All these secondary relays are the same. I mean, otherwise, how would you learn how to operate them? They must teach that at Starfleet.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I suppose so.
So after the credits, because Enterprise is situated nearby, but is unable to obtain a lock on Archer due to interference within the station, Archer orders T'Pol to fire the starship's phase cannons at exterior hatch J9 to decompress the station's central core. As the pathogens almost reach Archer, Enterprise destroys the entrance to the shaft where he is located. The captain is then blown out of the station due to decompression, and as he clears the top of the central core into space, he is quickly beamed aboard Enterprise by Commodore Tucker.
If Archer is a real fan of extreme roller coasting, he would have really enjoyed that.
Yeah, it was a bit, last chance, this move, because...
He even crossed his hands across his chest, like you're supposed to do if you're on one of these things.
Yeah, once again, it's probably an exercise that they do at the academy. throwing people in space just to see to teach them how to react.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, he assumed he knew which way up he was, because it would have been really funny if he was expecting to go up and he suddenly shot downwards.
Yeah, and probably that it was written on the hatch that it was G9 because it's the first time on this space station. How could you know that it was? But well, we're making fun of that, but that's those little details. I always look for that. I mean, of course, they won't let us. They won't show us that he's looking in the map and something like that because it would take too long. But it's always funny. Now, we are back in the stolen Klingon bird of prey as it crosses into Klingon space. Dr. Sung goes to the bridge and Malik very reluctantly gives up the captain's chair. Sung asks about the Enterprise, and when he's told that the ship is holding its position, he notes that Archer's not foolish enough to follow them. Malik responds that they won't see Archer again, as he believes Archer is dead. He believes he killed him on the previous episode. This triggers an angry confrontation between Sung and Malik. Still in a state of anger and unsatisfied with the ship's lack of speed, Sung attempts to reassert authority over Malik by ordering him to engineering to make some repairs to the engines, which Enterprise has previously damaged. Malik balks, saying that he's not an engineer, but then Sung tells him to go anyway, saying that "You're a bright boy, Malik. I'm sure you will figure that out." Malik then leaves the bridge in a sulk. I was expecting Malik to say, I'm an augment, I'm not an engineer. But no.
I have to chime in here with some praise for Brent Spiner because he sold his outrage, at these people who've been getting needlessly killed throughout this entire story arc. And you can tell so much that he dislikes it by just his facial expressions. And it starts to make him, for me anyway, it started making him, this scene in particular, kind of a difficult villain to root against sometimes, if we can even call him a villain at this point.
Yeah, I agree. I said that last week. I was when he tried to save the what was that, the deputy director, but
the man with no name.
Yeah, the man with no name. I said that it was switching to the likable side of the character, and to me, he stopped being a villain halfway through the last episode. But he's really great, and he's a really great actor. Without even saying a word, you can see that. He can convey his message just like that. Mm. Okay, so Archer, T'Pol, Phlox, and Reed discuss plans to stop Sung and his augments in Enterprise sickbay. Tucker is there too. To better the odds in Enterprise's favor, the Starfleet officers decide to emulate a Klingon warp signature in order to slip past the Klingon patrols. T'Pol reports that Dr. Lucas and his team are anticipating their return to Cold Station 12 to begin decontamination of the station. Tucker notes that that's quite a mess they've got to clean up. T'Pol says that Lucas estimates it will take more than a year to fully decontaminate the facility. There was a funny remark from Trip in this scene that when Archer asks how they can pass through Klingon space, he said, "I could paint a bird of prey on the hell."
Yes, that was absolutely. But Archer's face as he said that was an absolute picture.
But I would have loved to see that, bird of prey painted on the hell.
Yeah, inappropriate humor, Trip. Thanks, mate.
On the bird of prey, Sung talks of taking the augments to an area flooded with radiation from a supernova. Sung knows that there are signs of at least 2 habitable planets, and it would be difficult to find them within the clouds of radiation. Malik is not happy about this, and Sung tries to explain the need for a safe haven for the embryos to develop. Malik tries to reason with Sung, arguing that Starfleet won't give up so easily. Sung asks Malik what he would do, but Malik is uncertain, only that running away is not the answer. Malik then asks if Sung is familiar with the Botany Bay, a pre-warp vessel launched at the end of the Great Wars. Malik goes on to recount how the vessel left with many of their brethren, including their leader Khan Noonien Singh. Malik points out that Khan made the fatal mistake of running away from his enemies on Earth rather than facing them. Malik does not want to make that same mistake. He wants to face Starfleet rather than constantly running and hiding. Sung ends the argument by stating that the matter is not open to debate. He orders the ship to head to the Briar Patch, and he said the Klingon name, but I couldn't pronounce it, so I won't even try.
I think it was something like Clack de Kel Bracht.
Probably, yes.
Said possibly with a bit more of a Klingon accent.
But as he points out, it's a much catchier name, the Briar Patch.
Well, Briar Patch, absolutely. It almost seems like a nice place to be.
Almost, yeah.
Yeah. Now, at this point, I'm now asking, Sung has spent a lot of this episode so far battling against Malik's defiance. Now, despite the fact that he's not an augment, Sung is an intelligent chap. We know this. We've seen the evidence of it in the last 3 episodes. However, he must know that every time he works against Malik is just going to add that to the growing list of things that he's going to basically resent Sung for. And there's going to come a point where he's going to break. And he must be aware of this.
Yeah, do you think it was pushing Malik on purpose? But I don't see why he would do that.
No, I think it is this. What we're looking at here is a pure battle of wills. I think what Sung is trying to do is he's trying to put Malik back in the place where he should be, bearing in mind that Malik elevated himself to the leader of the Augments.
Yeah,
in the last 2 episodes ago, during the time when Sung was absent from their lives. So Sung's come back in again thinking, this is my team, this is my family. But suddenly Malik has become the man of the family.
Well, Malik went into, I believe, the 2nd episode and this episode already thinking he's superior to his own father. Despite the love, there's so many references, there's so many instances where he is denouncing humanity and saying that, augments should lead augments and stuff like that. And so, yeah, I think this is something that was projected. And I think it's definitely setting up that battle of wills that you mentioned.
Definitely.
Yeah. At this point, Malik is really getting annoyed by Sung. It's not just bothered by Sung. He's really annoyed. And we can see on Malik's face that it's not going to go like this for a long time.
I would even say that Sung appears surprised and maybe borderline shocked at Malik's behavior.
Yeah, I would agree with that, yes. Yet, on the previous episode, Malik already did some things that went against Sung's will. So it's kind of strange that he would only be surprised just at this point.
True.
I think whatever surprise that Sung is displaying, it's starting to become a lot less obvious. Now, obviously, in last week's episode, we saw a lot of things, a lot of interactions between them where Sung was quite disgusted, quite abhorred by some of the things that Malik had done. Whereas this time around, it's almost as though Sung is expecting Malik to behave the way he does. But what he's doing now is almost reverting to Malik being the child. He's now ordering him about again. He's now treating them as though it was 10 years ago. And he's just being a naughty boy.
Well, but that's the only experience with his children that he had. Was them as children, correct?
Correct, but it's only Malik he's doing that with. He's being protective against the entire family, but Malik is being petulant in his 10-year-old state. And Sung's response to Malik's petulance is effectively to behave like the parent, behave like the adult. So Malik's thinking, you're treating me like a child.
Yeah, but at the same time, Malik is the only one confronting Sung.
Precisely. So that's the reason why he's the only one that's being treated that way. Yeah. And I would imagine he's thinking it's unfair.
Probably, yeah. And he also thinks that he's superior to Sung, so that doesn't help.
No, absolutely.
Also, in this scene, you've got your link with the original series with the Khan reference. And,
yes.
We talked about that 2 episodes ago when you told us that you had picked at the Augments and found that Khan was an Augment, but we thought that Khan would be from after this episode, but apparently he was he left Earth after the eugenic wars.
Yes, did we work out it was? I can't remember how many years it was. We worked it out to be, but it was a lot. But I remember from the first 2 films, the original series films, that Khan had been left in some form of stasis for quite some time. So it kind of makes sense that now that I've associated the 2 together, that they're referring to Khan in the past rather than in the future.
Yeah, I've looked at the Memory Alpha link about the SS Botany Bay, and there were a good number of Augments who left Earth in this ship, but it was a pre-warp ship, so it was very slow, and they were all in stasis. Some of the stasis pods failed during the travel of the ship, and then Khan found the planet where Kirk finds him in what is that, the second movie, The Wrath of Khan?
Yes.
As the Augments head towards the Briar Patch, Enterprise positions itself on the border of the Klingon space. Commander Tucker reports that the warp coils have been realigned to look like a Klingon battlecruiser, but he warns the captain, this trick's not gonna work if we get within 80,000 kilometers. The captain puts the Enterprise on tactical alert and orders the course into Klingon territory at Warp 4. Now, why 80,000? Why not 100,000? 80 is just one of those random numbers that you can find in Star Trek.
Like, do they know the bird of prey technology that intimately that they can say it's exactly 80,000 kilometers and nothing's been upgraded or tweaked by the Augments or something? Yeah, I agree. It's a completely random number.
Yeah. They know the birds of prey in general enough to fake the warp signature. But, so, maybe it's written in the specs that they have. Who knows? Meanwhile, back on the bird of prey, Malik enters Sung's temporary laboratory. Sung asks Malik to stop challenging him in front of the others. He also asks Malik to trust that he knows what is best for the group. Sung begins to talk about how it wasn't easy after he left, but Malik interrupts by asking about the embryos. Malik realizes Sung is manipulating the embryo's DNA to remove aggression and violent behavior, and questions Sung's right to do so, arguing that what Sung is trying to fix might be exactly how their creators wanted them to be. The discussion is interrupted by a call from the bridge. Now, I think that Sung is losing control at this point, and maybe even that he has already lost control of the group, because when Malik interrupts him, when he's trying to say that it was not easy when he left, etc., he doesn't even argue. It's just there's something in his expression that say, okay, you're right, I've lost. I'm just going to give up and tell you what you want to say. And
I have to say, this is one of my favorite scenes of the entire episode. Because what Sung says to Malik about the alterations that he's making to the DNA is a total slap in the face. He's saying he's removing violent and aggressive tendencies, and he proceeds to call those a defect, effectively saying that Malik was defective, that he was a mistake. It's like your parents telling you were a mistake. That's how that scene came off to me, and that must have been, absolutely brutal for Malik to hear.
Yeah, and Sung even, confessed that he didn't have the technology at the time to do the same for his children. So essentially, he's telling Malik that is a problem.
Does that mean he wanted to 10 years ago? Oh, sorry, 20 years ago.
Probably not, because, he's doing that because he realizes that this group is getting, violent. And I'm sure that even if he had the technology, he might not have done On the bridge, Persis tells Sung that a ship is approaching at high warp. The ship is quickly identified as Enterprise. The Earth vessel arms torpedoes, and Captain Archer orders Sung to drop out of warp or face the consequences. Malik is in shock at the sight of Archer. You can see that in his face. The Augments shoot first with a little effect. Enterprise returns fire, causing aft damage to the bird of prey. Malik wants to engage Enterprise, while Sung does not, noting Enterprise outguns them 3-1. In desperation, Sung orders that the Denobulan pilot be placed on board of the shuttle. The bird of prey makes a detour to a star system with a gas giant, where Sung ejects the shuttle into the giant's atmosphere. It's trapped between two thermal layers, which will give the Enterprise enough time to mount a rescue mission. Archer acknowledges the situation he's in, allowing Sung to escape, though he warns the Doctor that this isn't over. Again, Enterprise does not pass the bird of prey, even though it was within fire range, and gets out of warp a good 5 seconds.
Don't get me started.
Okay, this is what drove me insane about this episode, is while they're sitting there talking, why not just pass a command, fire on these guys, let's get this over with.
But they always do that,
because they have to escape again, because the show's not over.
Yes.
Yeah, but Enterprise and Archer is, they're the good guys. They won't shoot first and just destroy the vessel if there's any other option. And I believe Archer always tries to talk his not necessarily enemy, but opponents, out of conflict before using weapons. So, but yeah, I really agree with you. They could have blown the bird of prey a lot sooner.
They could have done, but yeah, like you say, it's not the done thing, is it?
No.
I've got a slight problem with this scene, but before I do, I just want to point out that my second favourite part of this entire episode happened in that scene, and that was when Archer hailed the bird of prey. Sung remarked that Archer sounded pretty confident for a dead man.
Yeah.
You could see, because Malik had already identified Archer as having been killed because he thought he'd killed him. The look on Malik's face was absolutely priceless.
Yeah.
It really was.
Was really, what?
Yeah.
What's going on here? It's Archer is like, the guy you cannot kill.
So the small problem I have with that scene is that when Enterprise and the bird of prey are exchanging fire, we didn't actually see any weapons fire until the bird of prey headed towards the star system that it was going to go into. All we saw was the impact within each vessel being attacked. So you heard one vessel saying fire, and then inside the other vessel, sparks and explosions and fire everywhere. And then you went to the other vessel, and then you heard a bang and sparks and fire. But usually in these scenes, you would tend to see some exchange of fire from outside the vessels. And I felt that was really unusual for Star Trek, because they tend to go with the glorified visual effects from the viewpoint of space, rather than doing everything within the bridges.
Yeah, maybe they were run short of money for the effect. But yeah, there's no real explanation. I mean, there's no story explanation for that.
No, it just seems really unusual from my perspective.
And again, sparks flying, but things still working.
Well, yes.
After the commercial break, we're going to Act 2. Sung and the Augments are working on repairs to the bird of prey. Malik has worked to cloak the warp trail so the Enterprise cannot follow them. Malik quickly tells Sung of the 2,000 canisters of biogenic agents he beamed aboard the ship from Cold Station 12. Sung is immediately horrified by the act. Malik tells Sung the biogenic agents can be placed aboard a torpedo to create a bioweapon, and they can fire it at the nearby Klingon colony named Kuvat. If anyone speaks Klingon better than me, please correct me. Malik quickly outlines how hitting the colony with the agents would kill every living thing. Malik's reasoning is that once the Klingons learn it was humans who disseminated their colony, they would declare war on Earth and keep them busy for years. Sung immediately recognizes it as mass murder, but Malik will not be dissuaded. Sung tries to order Malik back to the bridge, but Malik no longer has any fear or respect for Sung. And I guess this time Sung has definitely lost control on Malik and the other Augments.
Yeah, well, Malik, I've noticed he's changing daily. He's gone from deceit to killing his brother to he's now at the point where he's like wiping out an entire colony with a dirty bomb, no less. Every time he does something, it's more and more sensational. The scale is growing each time.
What I wonder about Malik's, escalating actions is what is the trigger for that? What's causing that? It's clearly not just the interactions with his father and his siblings, right? I mean, but where does this growing hatred come from, or where did it manifest early on in his life? Or, I feel like that's not really explained. In some ways, he's kind of just the big bad villain to be a villain, but I don't necessarily see the motives for such huge, like mass murdering actions.
I'm wondering whether this is actually a result of the augmentation, because these humans, these augments, they have been adjusted, they have been genetically targeted to be the kind of people that they are. But the whole issue of equilibrium with your surroundings, it's only fair to surmise that any changes that are made to their genetic code, they could actually reject. So it may be that what he's experiencing, he actually has no control over. It's as a direct result of the genetic changes that have been made to his human infrastructure.
We know that since the beginning of this arc, Malik has always wanted to be the leader. I mean, right from the beginning when he captures the bird of prey and he confronts... I already forgot his name. Rakin, thank you. And we know how that ends, and he kills Rakin and takes leadership. So I think that Malik just wants, he wants to be the leader, and he always wanted to be the leader of this group. I'm sure, and now that he's basically the leader of the group, now he wants to expand that, and the defect that Sung was talking about is changing his personality. So the Enterprise rescues the Denobulan pilot and turns to finding the Augment's ship through enhancing the sensors. T'Pol takes the opportunity to try and talk to Tucker, since it seemed like he had been avoiding her since the wedding. He admits as much and says it will take time for him to adjust. He also says he was proud of her for what she did. He goes on saying they wouldn't have made a good couple anyway. Just then a beep alerts the two of a subspace distortion 0.4 light years away, and Tucker calls Archer to say that they may have found the ship. Now, Tucker says that Romeo and Juliet would be standing a better chance. Well, given how that ended, I'm not sure. But
that was a pretty drastic statement. So I have to say, I love that T'Pol opens this dialogue with kind of this nervous expression, and then she starts talking to him with small talk. How are your parents? Which is so completely unlike her.
Yeah, absolutely. But as we said in previous episodes, there's lots of things that are unlike any Klingon, and probably because she's been in contact with humans for a while. But it was. I noticed that too. I mean, you could see that she wanted to say something, but probably she didn't know what to say, and then she came up with, "How are your parents?"
Yeah.
So like it's like oh, it's nice weather today, something like that's very strange for a Vulcan.
But yet another observation of how T'Pol reacted to Trip's suggestion that they would not have made or may not have made a good couple. It almost looked as though she was about to protest against what he said.
Yeah, I didn't pick that up, but I'm going to watch that again.
Yeah, but I'm a hopeless romantic, so I'll pick up on stuff like that.
On the bird of prey in his quarters, Malik tells Persis that he is ready to take command away from Sung. Persis is reluctant to go along, but Malik tells Persis that while Sung may have raised them, he'll never be one of us. Malik is angry that Sung will not go along with his plan to use the biogenic agent as a weapon against the Klingon. Malik tells Persis that Sung is altering the embryo's genome, making them weak and docile like ordinary humans. This is a change that Malik cannot abide. In the end, Malik convinces Persis to go along with his plan of mutiny. Not long after, Malik, Persis, and 2 other augments enter Sung's lab and ask him to come with them. Sung wonders if Malik is going to kill him if he refuses, and when Malik says that no one else has to die, Sung asks about the millions Malik plans to kill with his bioweapon. Malik doesn't answer. Persis tells that there is no other way, and when Sung looks at her in the eye, she lowers her stare. Malik orders Persis to lock Sung in his quarters. Now, Sung is no longer the confident doctor we've seen so far. He's really... I don't know if he's disappointed or if he was expecting something like that, but it definitely changed, and he looks very disappointed at Persis, though. A lot more than disappointed at Malik. So I guess he was expecting that from Malik, but maybe not from Persis.
I was not convinced that Persis was actually going along with this mutiny. I don't know, there's something about the way she lowered her eyes and something about her expression when they looked at each other just told me, you know what, I think she's playing along for right now, but...
Yeah, that's been how she's been since the beginning. I mean, at the first episode, we didn't know if she was on Malik's side or Rakin's side, and then during the second episode, it was not clear if she was agreeing with Malik or not, and so it's still in her the way she was all the time. I wasn't sure if she was playing Malik or playing Sung at this point.
Well, she just doesn't seem to have much conviction.
What we said, I think it was last week, or maybe 2 weeks ago when Ryan was on the show, that she seemed to wait to see who's going to win, and then choose always the the part of the strongest party. So yeah, I'm not sure she's reliable in any ways.
Whilst I think that's part of it, I think there's also an element of not knowing who to be loyal towards. Part of it is self-preservation, I'm certain, but also I think she is genuinely torn between her loyalty to Malik, which is probably more driven by fear than anything else, and her loyalty to Rakin 2 weeks ago and Sung now. But I think that loyalty is driven by love, by family. So she's caught right in the middle of it.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, I've seen that she lowered her stare, and I thought, okay, so you're not proud of what you're doing, but I was really not convinced if she was going to go one way or another.
Mm.
So Enterprise is in Klingon space and is detected by another Klingon ship, just another random number of light years away. With the Universal Translator updated to more dialects of Klingon and the ship 2 minutes away from exposing them, Archer decides to try to fake his way out. He pretends to have Chancellor Emrek on board for a classified mission negotiating with the Orions. The Klingon wasn't notified of this and asks why they don't have the official transponder turned on. Archer responds that they need to keep a low profile and demands the Klingon not to mention this to his superior. The Klingon appears to accept it and the ship moves off. Reed is very surprised that it worked, and I am also very surprised that it worked. But Archer's a hero, so
you see this collective sigh of relief across the bridge when they close the channel. And I don't know, this scene was so corny, but also to me laugh out loud funny.
Yes, exactly.
My favorite scene of the episode.
Yeah, me too. And it was fun because it was quite tense this episode up to this point, where with all the opposition between Malik and Sung, and then suddenly we have this almost funny scene, and well, the Klingon was a little bit too easy to convince, but yeah, it was great.
This scene actually reminded me that the pacing of it so far, of this episode up to this point, really reminded me of the original series feature films. especially Star Trek 3 and Star Trek 6, where there is just this, this buildup and this tension and this suspense. And then you get like the banter with Scotty, or, something just genuinely funny happens to kind of lighten the mood and give it that comic relief. And I think the director and the script writers did a really good job with pacing on this episode.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Definitely, yeah.
I do have one of my characteristic problems with that scene, even though it was the funniest scene of the episode by far. I too drew a parallel to the sixth film, The Undiscovered Country. When the Enterprise A was travelling through Klingon space on the way to Rurapente in order to try and rescue Kirk and McCoy, they got hailed by a Klingon listening post. And Scotty mentioned that they have to respond in person because a universal translator would have been recognised. And yet here, 140 years earlier in the Star Trek timeline, A, they didn't even think about it, and B, more importantly, the Klingon captain in the other ship didn't notice.
What a clever observation.
Maybe the Klingon got better at recognizing a universal translator. And then this Klingon couldn't because he didn't know. And the feature film's Klingon could because he knew.
So that's stretching the potential for disbelief even further than the scene itself. I fail to understand how a Klingon couldn't recognize effectively a synthesized voice. They should know that they're not speaking to a Klingon.
Do you know why, Dave?
Go on.
Because it's the 90% argument.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's no more again.
We keep bringing that up every single time. It is the 90%, absolutely.
Yeah, we're geeks, so we pick that up. We pick those points up.
To be fair, though, I'm sure that whichever film you're in, the Universal Translator did a hell of a better job than Uhura did, trying to respond in Klingon in person in that same scene. That was cringeworthy. Anyway, back to the point. Sorry about that.
So, while confined to quarters, Persis visits Sung and explains why she went along with Malik, that he would have killed her if she hadn't. Sung understands, then tells Persis that if Malik deploys the weapon, he will confirm what Earth has always feared about the Augments, in the process destroying them all. Sung tries to plan some way to disable some key ship systems, but in the end, both Sung and Persis realize Sung needs to get off the bird of prey. Persis takes the internal systems offline and helps Sung to live in an escape pod. At this point, I was almost expecting Malik to stand behind the door of the escape pod, when it opened. Am I the only one to think that it was too easy for Persis to help Sung?
I didn't think that at all. I thought that it was going to be a genuine and successful escape attempt. It never even occurred to me that Malik could have been behind the hatch when it opened.
Okay, so it's just my paranoid self.
I do have a question about the escape pod, though.
Yes.
Well, they were travelling at warp speed when the pod was ejected.
Oh,
true.
Oh,
I am very surprised that an escape pod would have coped with warp speed.
Yes, that's true. So, Act 3 of this episode, the Enterprise eventually picks up the pod's automated distress beacon, pulling the pod and Sung back aboard the Enterprise. He's taken to the brig, where he finds it difficult to explain to Archer why he came back, and tries to get Archer to stop Malik and his plan. In the end, Sung tells Archer about the 300 kilograms of biotoxins that are missing from Cold Station 12's inventory, and that Malik intends to use them on the Klingon colony. Sung goes on reminding Archer that he saw what Malik did on the station, that Archer knows what Malik is capable of. Archer realizes that Sung didn't know how the Augments were before he saw that on the station. Sung tries to tell Archer that if Sung had been there for them, none of that would have happened. But Archer tells Sung that in the end, none of that would have mattered. It's in their nature they were engineered this way. Superior ability breeds superior ambition, which is a statement, a very strong statement. Now, while talking to Archer, he starts saying, "My children," but then it switches to the Augments. So it was, to me, it was a clear sign that it was, he had cut all the ties with them, that he was no longer seeing them as his family, but as, just someone that had to be stopped.
If I can throw you back to, I think it was which is the one that Udar was in? Was that last week?
Yes.
Yeah. So in the scene when they went to that outpost and Archer saw the video footage of Sung with the children around with the birthday party, I think what we're looking at here is now the complete opposite ends of the spectrum, where you have your tight, loving family unit, and then on the other side you have essentially two sides of a war of sorts.
That's a great observation. Yeah. I don't know if, probably because of what's going on after that. I think at this point, Archer also decides that, Sung might not be the villain in the story. He just realizes that he didn't know what happened to the Augments.
And yet, despite all of the evidence and everything that has happened in the past, and the fact that he's double-crossed him in the past, Archer yet again risks Enterprise by deciding to believe what Sung is saying. Now, I know from our side, we've already identified that Sung clearly has changed, and he's starting to cease to be the villain from our point of view. But I think Archer is taking one hell of a risk here by trusting him, by believing him.
Yeah, it's either a huge risk, or Archer is very good at reading people, and he decides that Sung really wants to help them, and Archer is that kind of captain that reads people very well and can figure out what value people have, and so I'm not sure he would have taken the Enterprise and. Following Sung's recommendations, if he didn't really believe that it was safe for the crew and the ship.
I'm really not convinced, because in Borderland, he decided to trust him. He took his, he still had his restraints on, to be fair, but he was given reasonable amount of freedom, and he threw that back in Archer's face. He double-crossed him. What's to stop him doing the same thing again?
Okay, this is up for debate, but I feel like whether or not this is a character flaw or a character strength is up to you to decide. But I've always felt like Archer is terrified by the what if scenario. In any episode, in any, critical situation, he can never ignore that what if, and he always has to kind of chase it down. What if he's telling the truth? What if millions of Klingons are going to die?
Yeah, and you think so? He's ready to take the risk just to check that?
I mean, well, that's a fair question. I don't know. I feel like I could point to probably several other situations where he has risked the Enterprise crew for very trivial things. Like any good Starfleet captain, they never want to risk even a single person dying.
Yeah. As we said, Archer decides to believe Sung, for the time being at least, and sets course to the Klingon colony. To get there on time, the ship has to travel at high warp. That might compromise the phony warp signature.
I suppose that's the reason why they were only at warp 4 when they went to pursue the ship in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Is it in this scene that Sung asks Tucker how fast they can go, and he said how long they can sustain the speed, and he said as long as the captor wants, or until it blows up, whichever comes first, which was typical trip. Okay, so back on the Bird of Prey, Malik confronts Persis in private. He asks her who she thinks helped Sung escape, and she's trying to put the blame on Lukash. Malik dismisses every argument Persis has, and she ends up picking a knife to attack Malik because he suggests that she's the one who helped Sung. After a quick fight, Malik kills Persis with the knife. To me, Malik really looks like a psychopath in this scene. He used the knife, he kills Persis, Then he kisses her, and then he uses his hand as if he was wiping blood from his hand. I mean, it was really, psychopath. That's the word that came to my mind when I seen that. I said, this guy is a psychopath.
Did you guys expect Persis to die?
No.
I didn't at all, and that was a bit. I don't know. It kind of made me angry that she died.
Yeah, but I think it shows that the madness going up in Malik's head. I mean, he is really ready to do whatever it takes to carry on his plan. So it surprised me that she died, but at the same time, it fits with the madness.
No, I agree. Same thing.
Also, a completely random observation about this scene in the quarters. Is the Bird of Prey's environmental controls damaged?
I know exactly where you're going.
Do you? Yeah. Like, why are they always sweating? Do they like it hot?
Oh, no, that wasn't where I thought you were going.
Why is Soong never sweating? Why are they? You know what I'm saying? Like, why? Why are the Augments always sweating in their quarters? What's going on?
Right. I was looking at this from a completely different viewpoint. I was wondering whether the temperature was too cold because Persis clearly wasn't wearing anything under her top.
But when they're laying in bed together and she's kind of turned away from him, you see their bodies are sweaty, and it doesn't look like they have done anything to generate that. It's just one of those strange observations.
It could be the studio environment,
maybe. While we're on this subject, what's with the Augments' clothes? There are holes in every single shirt they have. All of them. Is that something that only the Augments have? I don't know.
Is it a style, or is it just we haven't been able to change our clothes in 10 years?
Maybe they didn't have any more. Don't forget, they're living in this. I think they're certainly going towards living in a society where money doesn't exist anymore. They can't just go out and buy new clothes. They'd have to do it through trade. And I don't think they're the kind of people that would quite happily go into trade with different ships, different cultures, just in order to get new clothes. Think of this as a parallel to The Matrix. In The Matrix, when they're actually in the real world, they're all wearing crappy clothes with holes and slashes and all the rest in it as well, because they have nowhere else to get clothes from.
Interesting.
But in the Matrix real world, they don't have replicators that can replicate clothes. And they had replicators all over the Bird of Prey. So I'm sure they could...
That's a good point.
Yeah. But no, they still have their crappy clothes. Okay, so as Soong works with T'Pol and Tucker, he apologizes to T'Pol for the business with the Orions. When Trip asks Soong to stay focused on what he's doing, Soong notices that Tucker is a little protective of Commander T'Pol.
Yeah.
Trip says that he just don't like Soong very much. T'Pol then detects a ship, a Klingon D5 class battle cruiser. Because of Enterprise's high warp, the ship has picked up Enterprise's warp signature and, listening to their hail, obviously recognizes them as an Earth vessel. They demand that they prepare to be boarded. Again, there's this animosity between Trip and Soong that we noticed in the first episode of this arc, and I still don't know where that comes from.
I just think it's Soong pushing buttons, nothing more. He's just seen an opportunity to rib Trip about something that maybe he has a higher emotional quotient, an EQ, than other people. He can pick up on the fact that there is clearly a thing between them, and he's just winding him up about it.
Yeah, okay, I will accept that for the moment.
I wanted to offer one more thing about that scene with Soong and Trip, and take it for what you will. Maybe you don't agree, but there are so many instances where I think Soong, he likes to put his intelligence on display, regardless of who he's around or what situation he's in. And I think that was just another example of that.
Yeah, it could be, yeah.
This might be him taking advantage of the fact that he's in a situation and around people where he is the superior being. He has the higher intelligence, he has the higher functioning faculties, which he can't do amongst the Augments because he is actually the inferior
Interesting.
being in that instance.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, as in I cannot do that with the other, so I'm going to pick on you. Yeah, probably could be. So we're coming up on the fourth and final act of this episode. Archer tries to warn the Klingon captain, Mag, but the Klingon suspects it's a trick and that Enterprise might be the real attacker. Sung addresses him in Klingonese, saying Archer and the crew are honorable people and that they should, the Klingons should let them on their way. But Mag dismisses it and ends the hell. Archer decides to power down weapons, and when the battlecruiser tries to board Enterprise, Archer orders the Enterprise grappler to target the port nacelle of the Klingons. The Enterprise goes to full impulse and eventually tears open a piece of the nacelle, disabling the Klingon ship. And then they continue on to the colony.
As attacks go, that was probably the most intelligently beautiful piece of ship disablement I have ever seen in any show of this type.
Yes.
Even if it was incredibly hard to buy.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, it was, but this is Star Trek.
Yeah,
fair.
Yeah. It was one of this situation where they had to find creative ways, and I mean that from the story point of view, they had to find a creative way to get out of this. But visually on the screen, I don't know. I mean, I know there's no gravity and things are not heavy in space, but pulling on the spaceship with another spaceship with just two cables, those have to be really strong cables because I'm pretty sure the grapplers were not designed to tow a ship.
I think in terms of the believability of it, I think the one thing if I had to find a problem with it, the only thing I can think of is that the rest of the Enterprise crew seemed to understand what the plan was, despite the fact that Archer hadn't actually said what the plan was.
Yeah, maybe he said that while we were inside the Klingon bird of prey.
Oh, maybe. Yeah, you don't know what's being said when you're not actually watching them, do you?
They had a meeting in the ready room.
Well, of course.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Despite the visual aspect of the scene, it was a really intelligent way to get out of this very potentially dangerous situation. So while the Enterprise is tearing the bird of prey into pieces, Malik scans of the colony reveals 3 population centers. Malik plans to detonate the bioweapon over the southern hemisphere in order to maximize the number of casualties. Problems with the torpedo guidance system and the appearance of the Enterprise on their long-range sensors complicates Malik's plan. On the Enterprise, intercepting the bird of prey turns to be problematic as the engines are ready to blow up. The Augments are able to launch the bioweapon, but Enterprise manages to fire a trio of torpedoes, one of which manages to destroy the bioweapon. Did you notice that 1 second Trip complains about the engine basically overheating and the nacelle will blow over, I don't know what he said, and 5 seconds later, he said, "Okay, I'm going to give you an extra boost, so you have your extra speed." He's really good as an engineer, to be able to put that out. Also, Tipple says that the bioweapon will take 12 seconds to reach the atmosphere. So I did a geeky thing here. I took my phone, I started the stopwatch, and it actually took 21 seconds for the Enterprise torpedo to destroy the Augments one. So it was well within the atmosphere when it was destroyed. But
time is measured differently in a vacuum.
Because the torpedoes goes very fast. I forgot about the time distortion. Sorry. Basic astrophysics and sorry. So once the Augments weapon is destroyed, the bird of prey shoots at the Enterprise, critically damaging most weapons in just one shot. While 10 minutes earlier they almost didn't do any damage to the Enterprise, but maybe they didn't have any shield at this point. Whatever. With only the aft cannon, Archer wants to target the bridge of the bird of prey, but Sung stops him and explains that the bridge is protected, but the primary power grid is vulnerable. Archer trusts him once again and orders, I think it was Malcolm, to shoot at this point, and they disable the bird of prey. Tipple can only read 12 biosigns on board. And surprisingly, Malik prefers to die rather than be captured and proceed to overload the dilithium matrix.
Now, T'Pol mentioned that she was reading 12 biosigns, as you quite rightly said. But I'm confused. Did that include Persis? Because if it didn't, I'm sure that Sung would have been intelligent enough to realise that that wasn't the complement that he left on the ship when he escaped from it.
Because I think there were more than 12, and he seemed relieved to learn that there was 12 biosigns, or he should be hungry. There's something that escapes me there.
I'm just trying to think how many have died at this point, because there were 16. I think there were 16 in the last episode.
Well, Persis died in this one.
Persis died in this one.
I think that's all.
Yeah. There should be 15 then.
Well, not necessarily. That shot where Malik is preparing to overload the dilithium matrix. Before that happens, I remember seeing him kind of put his hand under the shoulder of one of his siblings, and it looks like he was dead in that same room that he's in. So we know at least one person died.
If there's only 12 biosigns on the Klingon bird of prey, Sung shouldn't be relieved. He should be worried, because I think I remember that he asked T'Pol, "Are they alive?" And when she says 12, it should, there's something strange with this count.
Yeah, 12 is not the right number.
So I have to point something else out about this scene. What really struck me was that I was wondering if Sung was telling the truth about the bridge being protected and the weapons not being able to penetrate it. And if that was kind of his last-ditch effort to save his kids, because knowing that, if you're targeting the bridge, there's a high chance that you're going to kill people on the bridge. But if you try to simply disable the ship, right, then their chances of survival are much higher.
Yeah.
Do you guys think he was telling the truth about that? I don't know the technicalities of that particular bird of prey, but I just got this feeling that he was being deceptive there.
That's a really good observation. And not only that, if Archer was originally intending to target the bridge, then he would have intended deaths or even the destruction of the bird of prey in itself, which kind of negates the good he did by not destroying the other bird of prey that he tore the nacelle off of.
Yeah.
Do
you think the writers of this episode actually, think the same thing we just discussed?
I could not say. I would hope so, because I don't know, because I want to put that much faith in the writers, but I don't know. I really don't know. I just, Spiner and his character were so layered and so nuanced, and that's why I considered that.
Yeah, it could have been. I didn't thought that at the moment. I really thought he was telling the truth. I was confident in the fact that Sung was a good guy since half of the previous episode. So maybe you can actually look at this episode and the previous one in different perspective. If you look at this as Sung is a good guy and he regrets everything that he's done and what his children did, then no, I didn't think he was deceiving Archer, but I can understand that you can still see him as the bad guy and still, expect that he's going to do something to escape and help his children escape. Yeah. So, which proves that Spinner was a very good actor if we can't decide by just looking at him playing.
Indeed. Yeah.
Okay, so Sung pleads Malik to not blow the ship up, but Malik argues that it's better to die there than be in prison. Then the bird of prey explodes.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't?
No, it doesn't. It popped, it farted, and it fell apart. That was not an explosion. I was incredibly disappointed by that. And not only that, it was also an explosion with gravity. It didn't explode, and it was an incredibly disappointing destruction of a bird of prey.
Okay, were there different CGI artists on season 4? Different special effects team on season 4 than there were at the tail end of season 3? Because for a show this old, The last 2 episodes of season 3 with the final Zindi conflict, those special effects blew me away. I was so impressed by those. And it's like they really slid backwards in season 4, even if the storytelling got a lot better.
That's what we noticed. Which was Home? I think it was.
It was Home.
Yeah,
yes.
Home. That as you said, the end of the previous season. That's the season ender. So probably it gets a little more budget for that because it has to be good episodes so that people get hooked and they want to see more. And if I remember correctly, at the end of season 3, they didn't know if there was going to have a 4th season. So maybe they didn't have all the budget at the beginning of season 4. I don't know. Just speculations.
They also had to reconsider how they approach season 4. I think the fact of how season 3 was received by the fans, the writers, I would imagine the visual effects guys as well, would have had to have thought really, really carefully about how they approached season 4. And it may just be that the effects budget was modified as a result. That there hasn't been anything really outstanding with regard to visual effects for the whole of season 4 thus far, and that might be by design.
Maybe, but yeah, actually, as you said, Jason, the storytelling so far is really great. Every episode has a very strong story, and especially this 3-episode arc, very very interesting.
Yeah, and I want to talk more about this after we finish the remaining scenes.
Sung, stunned at the loss of his children, is escorted in handcuffs to the crew quarters for the trip back to Earth. Suddenly, Malik drops from the ceiling. Richards, which is called Richards because Memory Alpha calls him Richards, immediately fires, but that does not stun Malik. Malik then knocks Richards and Archer down, proceeds to try killing Sung for betraying the Augments. As he holds Sung by the throat, Archer manages to kill Malik by blasting a big hole in his stomach with Richard's particle rifle.
Man, that was good. That hole in the gut.
It was brilliant.
Good.
You could see Archer through it. It was fantastic.
But how come Archer punches a big hole in Malik's stomach with the same rifle that Richards used 5 seconds earlier? That didn't have.
Have you
any
never seen Star Trek before? You know that all guns have 2 settings.
Yeah,
or more.
Stun and obliterate.
I guess this one has. This one should have 3 settings, like stun, kill, and captain's using it.
Well, he's got special code he enters. To
I
give
just
it
remember.
More.
I remember in the previous episode where they had this one standoff with one of the augments, and they couldn't even down him with 3 stun shots, and they were going, well, what? And I think Tripp said, what does it take to kill them?
Well, it takes a captain.
It takes a captain holding the rifle, exactly.
Richard's rifle, specifically.
Now, please, somebody tell me, how the heck did Malik get on board the Enterprise, crawl this way to precisely where Sung was? Well, it was not going to the brig, it was going to the crew quarters, and even Sung was surprised by that. So, well, how did he do that? I mean,
I presume he transported himself.
Well, every time someone transports in or out the Enterprise, there's probably 500,000 alarms going off.
Yes, but they'd already reported. Pollard reported an energy surge coming from the bird of prey, whilst Malik was trying to overload the dilithium matrix. So it may have been masked by that.
Clever.
Okay. I give you that for the transport. Now, how did he find exactly where Sung was?
Don't know.
You don't have an answer for that.
No.
But I was surprised. I have to say, I didn't see that coming. I thought it was the end of the episode and, it was going back to Earth. And then suddenly Malik falls from the ceiling. And it surprised me. So now we're coming to the end of this episode. We're back on Earth. Sung is taken back to his very clean cell. He remarks that at least you could have let me finish my work before you take it away and destroy it. Archer replies that none of his prior work during his time in prison has been destroyed and is stored in a secure location for potential future use. Sung doubts that that will ever happen. Sung, now believing that humanity cannot be perfected, instead turns his attention to creating an artificial life form. Thought he doubts he will finish the work himself and that it might take a generation of two. I love this this reference to next gen and the fact
Data.
that Nguyen Sung it's not his son, it's probably his grandson or even farther down the family tree. But yeah, it was a nice final touch.
Yeah, great bit of continuity there and closure. It kind of gave me chills, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, it was such a perfect way to
Well, it gave me chills, but for a completely different reason. And I spoke to Yannick about this just after I'd watched the episode. And I think I'm probably going to be dropping myself in it here, but I never made the connection between Sung and Data. Now I realise why they cast Brent Spiner to play the various Sungs that there have ever been. And before you start with the whole how can you not have known this malarkey, you have to bear in mind that in terms of Next Generation, I've only ever watched that show casually, certainly not at the intensity as I am now that we're doing this. So I didn't pay much attention to who Data's creator was when the relevant Next Gen episodes were aired. I do know there was an episode when Data met at least one of his brothers, but I never put two and two together to realise that actually who we're looking at now is essentially Data's great-great-grandfather or whatever it was going to be.
Yeah.
So for me, this was a phenomenal revelation, particularly the ancestry link between Khan and Data. Essentially, they're related in some really odd and detached way.
Not really.
Well, if you consider that it's tenuous, I know, but if you consider that Data is Nguyen Sung's son, which he isn't because one's life form, one's artificial.
Yeah.
And then you go up to Arik Sung, who we've been looking at in this episode, who was the father but wasn't of the Augments, of which Khan, 100 and how many was it years prior, was a member of the same group.
But Arik Sung didn't created the Augments. That's the result of the eugenic wars.
No, but he was the father of. He was the
of 17 of them.
Let's call the stepdad.
Okay, I give you that.
It's tenuous. It's incredibly loose, but there is a family connection there between Khan and Data.
Okay, I give you that.
It's not, but if you follow it back, you can kind of link them together somehow.
You realize now that Brent Spiner played Arik Sung, played Data, he played Lore, he played Before, and
Yes.
he played Nguyen Sung in Next Gen. So he played 5 characters on different Star Trek shows.
It's brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a brilliant bit of casting, and I'm really curious to know whether this was a thing that was written before they secured Brent Spiner for this, or if they got him and then said, "Oh, we have to write this story arc now," like because you can't do this Sung story arc without him, right? I don't think so.
I think that at the end of season 3, they had to find something and to bring viewers back. And one way to do that was to bring characters from previous successful shows. And then probably once they had secured Brent Spiner, they wrote the I have no proof of that.
I think that's the only logical way to go about it. Yeah. Well, it worked. I mean, I found myself after these 3 episodes actually angry that Enterprise got canceled, where I was struggling to even stomach the first 2 seasons, and it took a little bit of willpower and patience to get through season 3.
It was a struggle.
Yeah, but there were highlights, of course, but a lot of lowlights. And now with what 6 episodes into season 4, I'm bitter about the fact that I had never seen this show before and that there's only 4 seasons because it was getting brilliant.
Yeah, I agree.
Do you think that if they started Enterprise with what we are now seeing as season 4 as season 1, they might have got the full complement of 7 seasons out of it?
Man, that's tough.
I think that if they just had, didn't have the 3rd season, then maybe, because season 1 and 2 were not bad.
No, they weren't.
Season 3 was really, I don't want to see that anymore. But
no. It's in the bin with Voyager.
Season 3, you can argue that season 3 was either a fatal mistake or way ahead of its time. Because this was Netflix television, right? This was one story arc through the entire season. That's something that you binge watch. That's not something that you leave a cliffhanger for people every single week for 24 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe if they had that as the 7th season, as the grand finale of the series, the end of first episode of or the second episode which was Stormfront Part 2. When they get out of the Expanse, well, they come back from the past actually, but they appear getting out of the Expanse, and then there are all the vessels are here to welcome them. That could have been the end of the series if that was the end of season 7, for example. So maybe if they had the whole Xindi Expanse thing at the end of the series, that would have worked.
I just found myself, I don't know, I think my biggest complaint with season 3 was I found myself really disliking Archer. And the entire tone of that entire season was so dark and gritty, and that can work if you do it right, but you have to remember that people need a hero and not an anti-hero in a show like Star Trek. And Archer was kind of going down a really dark path, and I just stopped liking him. He was always just, I'm going to frown and be angry all the time, and that's all I'm doing.
Yeah, I agree with that, yes. So that's why I believe if they had pushed that to later on, maybe, to end the series, then it could have worked. You finish on this special Expanse thing, and to me, that's what killed the series.
Maybe even if they'd taken it and done it as a standalone arc on it, so in its own right, taken it out of the Star Trek Enterprise series, so it just ended on 3 seasons, and maybe did it as Star Trek Enterprise Expanse or Star Trek Expanse or something along those lines. Take it out of the core of Enterprise, it might have worked better. I think if they'd put the Expanse season at the end of the entire series of Enterprise, I think Enterprise would have gone down as a lot worse than it is viewed now.
Mm-hmm.
At least doing it this way with season 4, they've actually got an opportunity, which to my mind, they've taken it to actually make Enterprise a worthy and memorable series.
Yeah, that makes sense. So that concludes our review of Star Trek Enterprise Season 4, Episode 6. And I guess, guys, if you're ready, it's time to switch to some discussions and talk with Jason.
Let's do it.
Let's go. So, Jason, you said you had some things to say about this. Was it about this episode or about the series?
It was about the episode, actually. It kind of just a talking point, and throw it out there and see what you guys have to say about it. Were the augments actually superior to humans? Because when you look back on it, they had all the same flaws, the violent tendencies. They were betraying each other at the drop of a hat.
I think it really depends on how you define superiority. Because in some respects, they were superior, physical attributes potentially, in terms of their strength, in terms of their reaction times. I know that Malik made a huge demonstration in Borderlands about how, was it Borderlands? Yeah, I think it was, about how quick the augments were to react to things. And certainly in terms of their intelligence, they were seemingly more superior to standard humans than that. But I would argue that in terms of their emotional ability, their social ability, the stuff that can't be measured by physical characteristics, they very much failed on in terms of the superior race. And I think that's possibly how they didn't succeed in what they were trying to achieve, because they weren't able to take a step back and look at things from a distance. It was all in the now. It was all quick. It was all knee-jerk reactions. It was all me, rather than, thinking collaboratively, thinking as a community.
Could that be the consequence the consequence of being alone for 10 years?
Doubtless.
Because they were 10 years old when Sung got captured by the Starfleet, and so they were on their own for 10 years. And if you leave children, 10-year-old children together for that many years, they're not going to develop social characteristics. They're going to stay children. And to me, they were really augments, as in, but they were superior, as in, as they've said, as their physical characteristics, but they didn't have any guidance, so they couldn't get better than humans on their own.
See, I respect that argument, but I don't accept it, because Sung himself basically called them defective, and he realized that this was an inevitability, that these behavior traits and these characteristics that they had were the result of his mistake, because he used that word mistake. So I don't really think that him bailing on them for 10 years would have made a difference in the long run.
Because they were who they were.
They were who they were. They were who he made them to be.
That's what Archer says, yeah.
I also would have expected that because they spent so much time on their own, I would have expected a little more interactivity through the herd mentality. The fact that they were working as themselves in a community, they were sustaining themselves as a community, they were surviving as a community. I would have expected a lot more social interaction between them that went beyond basically Malik barking orders at them.
That's an interesting point.
I don't know if you look at what happens in nature with the herds of wild animals. There's often one alpha male, and that's it. There's not a lot of interaction between the herd.
I can't dispute that. I think that's right.
They sure had a herd mentality when they decided to all turn against Sung on the bird of prey.
Oh yeah, was that fear though?
Yeah.
Was that herd mentality, or was that the alpha male thing?
That's a good question. Yeah, that could very much be the alpha male thing. Yes.
Yeah, that's follow the leader behavior. I think. Yeah. To summarize, yeah, I think they were physically superior, but lacking lots of guidance to get superior in intellect and instinct. And last week, Dev had a question for me, so I'm going to ask that question to you, Jason. Is that, are we as human as bad as the Augments are, as in ready to grab people that we don't agree with and throw them in jail, or even worse? And are the Augments? I guess my question is: are the Augments just a magnified view of the humans, or are they really defective?
Whew. That is a loaded philosophical question, my friend.
I don't expect a straight answer.
Wow. The first thing that sticks out at me is, the Augments were created by humans, so of course they were flawed. And of course they reflected some of our best and some of our worst traits.
Yeah, I agree with that non-answer.
Very political answer for you there.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Sung said that the DNA, the genome of the Augments was defective, and he was trying to correct that defect. I wonder whether Udar was what he had in mind.
Oh.
Wow.
Because Udar didn't have the enhanced strength.
Oh, but
he didn't
had super
have
hearing.
the enhanced. Yeah. The super hearing that
Very
didn't
useful,
work.
yeah.
He didn't have. Well, he might have had the enhanced intelligence. We never really got to know him enough to see whether that was the case. But he certainly had the emotional ability and the social ability. He was actually quite a personable person. So I'm wondering whether that's what Sung was trying to do. He was trying to alter it to closer to what Udar was. Was Udar an experiment?
That's very, very possible, and which is why that they, the Augments left him behind.
Because they recognized he wasn't part of it. He wasn't them.
Yeah, he wasn't them, and they don't tend to blend well with anything that isn't them.
Yep.
So I guess then Udar was basically, well, he was a creation that had the longer life and resistance to disease and things like that, but I guess lacked the more aggressive and violent tendencies, right? Is that kind of what the perfect augment was in Sung's mind? Just more intelligent, but lacking like the extra superhuman style abilities and the aggressiveness and stuff.
Well, not necessarily the superhuman abilities, the strength necessarily, but he did particularly call out the violence and aggression as the elements he was trying to remove from the DNA, from the genomes.
So maybe he did that and just didn't realize it until they met.
Maybe.
I don't know.
But why would he have done it different to? Was Udar an accident? I don't mean that in the in a negative sense, but was he a happy accident there in that respect? Or did he try something different? I mean, we don't know. We're not going to know.
We don't know. We don't know if all of 1,900 of those, well, there were more, obviously. There were more than 1,900 embryos at some point. We don't know if he, quote unquote, tweaked the design on any of those, or if they were just completely identical.
He said to Malik that he didn't have the technology to do some modification to the genome at the time. So
then we can assume that he messed up with Udar.
Yeah,
somehow. Whether or not that was considered messing up, but he did something differently on accident, perhaps.
Yeah, maybe he tried something and didn't know what he was doing and ended up with Udar. Yeah, it's possible. We will never know.
No. I'm intrigued now. I'm going to have to do some research if I can find out how the augments came to be.
Yeah, the eugenics wars and all that stuff.
Yes.
And yeah. I'm sure there's some novels about that out there. Maybe not canon, but there's got to be some stories about that.
Mm-hmm. And that could do a very interesting subject for a future episode.
Absolutely.
Because I'd never heard the phrase eugenics wars until this episode, or until this arc.
It's referred to in the pilot of Next Gen. When Q brings Picard and there's Worf, there's Troy, and there's I don't remember who, and he brings them to a fake tribunal, and he blames blames them on the eugenic wars.
Huh?
Well, it blames the eugenic wars on them.
From what I'm looking at, there was one mention of the augments in the original series.
In the original series.
Wow.
Which
man.
was
I've got to weave all this stuff together now.
Season 1, episode 24. That would have been the season finale, wouldn't it?
What's the name of the episode?
Space Seed.
There's an episode of the original series with Khan, I think. So maybe it's in one of those two.
Khan was in it.
Oh, okay.
That explains it.
Khan was in that episode. That's why.
That's why. Yeah. Well, now that we have discussed about this very interesting subject, Dave, do you think it's time to try to start putting Jason on the grill and ask?
Oh man!
Ask our quick fire questions.
Quick fire questions. There. Are you ready for this? Because
I am not ready. No, I don't know what to expect here.
People aren't ready for these.
No, you cannot be ready for that. It's really
no, absolutely. Particularly if you answer a question with ambiguity, and I'll then grill you even further to actually be more specific.
Every answer is Voyager.
No. You,
Right,
Jason,
that's
you
one
will.
person we won't be inviting.
Yeah,
back.
you will never come back.
Unless the question is worst series,
Which we don't have.
which we don't have.
No.
And no, we won't. Right, okay. So we've got 7 questions currently. That may grow in time, but 7 questions at the moment. They're quick fire. So whatever the first thing that comes into your mind. Okay.
Okay.
Are you ready?
No.
Good. Favorite series.
Next Generation.
Favorite film.
Oh, Star Trek 6, Undiscovered Country.
Oh, okay. Nice one. You can come back. Favorite ship.
NX-01 Enterprise.
Excellent. Favorite captain.
Picard.
Very good choice.
Yeah. Favorite character.
Data.
Good choice too.
Yeah, I'll go with that. Everything seems to be kind of like next gen aligned.
Can I give an alternate? Okay, second favorite character, the Doctor, the EMH from Voyager. Because come on, like he's so sarcastic and you know I love his character.
As I said last week, one of the only very good thing on Voyager.
Favorite storyline, and this can be an arc plot, a single episode, or even a section from a film.
You know it's going to be Next Gen again. The Inner Light, the episode where he lives out an entire lifetime from an alien planet that has been destroyed. Do you guys remember that one?
I don't.
No, I don't.
Oh man, that's honestly my favorite Next Gen episode ever. It's called The Inner Light.
Okay, I'm going to see it soon because I'm binge watching TNG at the moment.
And the okay, well shoot, then I won't spoil it.
No, go ahead.
Well, Picard actually lives these lives. Like he lives these lives. He lives this long life as a completely different person. It's not a dream. He lives it in real time. And when it's all over, he is faced with the knowledge and the cold, hard fact that he had a wife and he had kids and he had grandchildren and they're all dead.
I think I vaguely remember that. But yeah, I'll keep that in mind when I watch it.
It was intense.
Was he still aware of it after the fact?
Yes. Oh, yes. It's referenced. It's referenced later on in the series, and it's also referenced in several of the books.
Does it draw any parallels to the Nexus sequence in Generations, or is that completely detached from it?
Oh man, I can't remember the names of the family that were in. It wasn't Robert, was it? Robert wasn't in the Nexus.
Robert was his brother,
right? But he wasn't in the Nexus.
He wasn't in the Nexus, but in Generations, Robert and Rene, Robert's son, died in a fire.
Right. Okay, then it was
after he had that news that he went into the Nexus to get Kirk out. And the first time he ended up in the Nexus, there was this kind of dream sequence as it appeared.
Right, I remember
where he was married, he had kids, Rene was still alive, and it's
different.
all things.
Yeah, different.
So it's completely different. Right?
It is completely. It's not connected.
Right. Okay. Fair play.
And there goes our rapid fire question.
Yeah. Well,
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. This is all. These are gems.
Yeah.
We do one more.
Hit me.
It's the one that catches everybody out. Favorite villain?
Oh, yeah. Damn you. Favorite villain?
Thank you very much.
I mean, there's such a great pool to choose from, and I feel like I don't want to rely on a next gen villain again. But it's
do it.
It's Lore.
Yeah.
Data's evil brother, Lore.
Okay.
I guess I'm just a next gen fanboy, except for my favorite ship.
Yeah, the NX,
Yes.
the NX one is such a nice ship. As I said, it's not that big, but I love it too.
It's just that it's like all the readouts, it actually seems to really remind you of, modern day submarines, and you can sort of see the evolution of the submarine to the starship in X-01. I really like that.
Yeah, I think it's it's a small bridge, and the crew is really as one team. Whereas on the NCC 1701, the bridge is huge, and it's even it looks empty when you see it for the first time on the next gen one. Mm. Right, so that concludes our 7 questions to our guest. So, anything else to add, Dev?
No, I think that Jason's given us some pretty decent answers.
Yes.
We should probably keep a track of all these answers and maybe publish them.
Yeah. Maybe,
has anyone answered anything else but Picard? I don't know if you guys ask these in every episode. I definitely listened to the last few, but is that a consistent answer as Picard? It's such an easy one.
I think
no. I think Ryan said.
Oh,
Kirk.
Ryan said Kirk, didn't he?
Did
he say Kirk? Okay.
Michael said Picard too, but just after he realized that there was the best character, because he picked up Cisco first, and then he switched and he said best captain Picard and best character Cisco. Well, we should definitely write those down and publish them on our website, and maybe we can extract this section of the show and make that an audio snippet.
Why not?
Why not?
Also, why didn't I say the Borg as the I don't know, as the worst villain or
because
best
as
villain?
You said, there are so many villains to like.
There are just lore. I think it just comes down to Brent Spiner again, because he's just brilliant and just so much fun to watch.
Yeah. Maybe we should change the question from favorite villain to best villain.
Yeah, maybe. Well, that concludes our questions to our host, and that also brings us to the end of this 6th episode of Tea Earl Grey Hot. Thank you very much to everyone who downloaded our previous episodes. Our podcast can be found everywhere fine podcasts are, including but not exclusively on Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Where are we still? Well, anywhere good podcasts can be found. If you find us on a place we haven't mentioned, please send us an email. And if, as Dave said last week, if you don't find us where you expect us to be, send us also an email, and we'll try to do our best to, spread all over the world. Resistance is futile. We're coming to you. So please help us spread the word by sharing the show on social media, talking to a friend, sticking a banner on the back of your dog, etc., etc. And if you're so inclined, leave us a nice review in your podcast app.
Maybe if we got some stickers made up that people could get from us, then they can stick those on the back of a dog instead.
Yes, swag. We need swag.
Swag, yes. Merch.
Yes. So, Dev, how can people contact us?
Right, of course. So we do have a website where all of our show notes for all of the shows that we have produced so far can be found, and that's over at teaearlgreyhot.org. And of course, don't forget that if you do have any comments and feedback, one of the places you can do that is by putting a comment on the bottom of the show notes. There's a little comment box. You can put your feedback in there.
Yes, you can also send us an email at feedback@teaearlgreyhot.org. We read absolutely everything. As we said last week, we're going to read your feedback unless you tell us not to. So send it in. We like feedback.
We certainly do. And of course, you can find us on social media as well. We're on Twitter and Facebook as TEGH Podcast. And you can also join us on our Telegram group, which you can find at t.me/TEGH Podcast.
And we're also on Mastodon at mastodon.social/@TEGH Podcast.
Thanks, as always, to Memory Alpha. We've based our review of this week's episode on their work, and their review has been released under a Creative Commons by attribution non-commercial license.
The rest of the show, unless otherwise stated, is released under a Creative Commons by attribution share-alike license, which means that you can do pretty much whatever you want with it, as long as you credit us as the original authors. And if you publish something based on this episode, except for the review, you have to release it under the same license.
Don't forget, this podcast is a part of the Other Side Podcast Network. You can find more of our shows over at otherside.network.
Absolutely. And we have some cracking shows over there, including, but not exclusively, an award-winning music podcast named The Badcast, hosted by none other than Dave.
Yeah, that'd be me. I suppose actually, while we're doing this, we should probably also shout out our newest member of the network.
Oh yes,
the Binary Times, which is a Linux and open source podcast, has recently joined the Other Side Podcast Network. Find them over at thebinarytimes.net. It's an awesome show. You really should go and listen to it.
And welcome to the family, guys.
Indeed.
Next episode will be a review of Enterprise Episode 7, The Forge, plus Episode 7 of Season 4. Plus our usual fortnightly news roundup.
And I do believe that episode 7 of season 4 is the start of another 3-part arc.
Really?
Yes, which should be really interesting.
Is this the pattern for season 4?
After the 3-part arc, I think there is then a 2-parter. Or there might be another 3-parter, I can't remember. But there are a lot of to be continued episodes in season 4, yes, including I think in season 4 we do a Mirror Universe pair of episodes as well.
Those are always enjoyable.
It certainly are.
Yeah.
Well, Jason, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
My pleasure.
I would like to, on a personal note, bearing in mind that our career in podcasting, I've known you for quite some time now, many years, and yet this is the first time we have ever actually spoken.
That is kind of hard to fathom, actually.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, we never actually worked together, but we were part of the same association.
The Association of Music Podcasting.
That must be going back, I think, at least 11 years. I think the Bugcast joined the association then. And am I right in thinking you were there from the start?
Yeah, I mean,
you're one of the founders.
I was one of the founders, and I think I started podcasting in October 2004.
Wow,
was one of the first 30 on the globe. It was quite an honor, and I've always been so fascinated and drawn in by podcasting ever since. So, but getting back to your point that this is way overdue, we should catch up, make up for lost time.
Definitely. I mean, I do a few podcasts. You can come and join on them. I know you do one. Maybe you'll invite me to it. I don't know.
I might. Really? We'll see.
Dave, what podcast could that be?
Well, I think we should probably let Jason tell us about his podcast.
So the podcast is Linux for Everyone. It's a show about mostly desktop Linux and open source software and Linux gaming, and a big focus on the community who is both creating that ecosystem and enjoying that ecosystem. So the guests are everyone from the CEO of Codeweavers to Dell's Barton George, who runs the Project Sputnik program. There'll be musicians. There'll be the founder of Elementary OS. It just goes all over the map, and it's an absolute blast to do this show every week. I've never had as much fun doing a podcast or really producing any kind of content before in my life, and I hope that enthusiasm comes through. People say it does, and if you're curious about Linux, or if you're not especially technical and you don't want to kind of drown in all the the jargon and the technicalities, then I think you might enjoy it.
And where can people find this fine podcast?
The main site is linuxforeveryone.fireside.fm. It's a very long URL. You can search for Linux for Everyone in every podcast player. It's in there. And you can find us on Twitter at Linux4Everyone, and Telegram and Mastodon and Facebook, the same tag.
Well, thanks, Jason, once again for joining us on this episode.
Absolutely my pleasure, you guys. I had fun.
Yeah, me too. It was really nice. We will catch you, dear listeners, next week with our next episode. In the meantime, take care of yourselves. Ciao, ciao.
See ya.
See you later.